I didn't tell my teacher that I didn't like the book in case she thought it was a bit rude and told me off.
From one point of view as an adult as well, sometimes I feel a bit embarrassed saying this is what I'm reading, because it's not what everybody's reading at that point in time, because I think that can be, it can stop you finding a confident voice when you are talking about books if it's a book that nobody can relate to.
In the UK, it has felt like there is a bit more of a distinction between the proper book and the improper book. I've definitely seen that idea of, a child as they read, if they're older than 8, they shouldn't be having pictures in their books anymore.
I think as an adult you feel more confident or empowered because you know you have rights, you can discard a book. And I think sharing the idea that as a child you have rights as a reader as well, and you have these choices and you can make these choices, I think that's really important.
There's no such thing as an objectively good book. It is that good for someone. If you think about conversations as an adult with your friends, you don't always tell them what you're reading. But also I also spend a lot of time in bookshops, and sometimes I'll see a kid gravitate towards the book and they'll pick one up, and the parent will take it away from them and be like, no, you should read this one instead. And because I have no shame about what I read, but I feel like that was a very kind of fortunate experience for me. And just, I suppose, as an adult, reading without shame is a really good way to model it for children as well.
Whereas I think it took myself a long time to feel that I could read without shame and read whatever I like to read and when I want to read and how I choose to read. And I think that's it's taken me a long time to build up that confidence. So to expect children to have that confidence, or maybe they innocently do have that confidence initially, but we say, no, this is what you should be doing or how you should be doing it. But I think that's the point, and I think maybe that's something that we've got to expand on, that all types of texts, or not all types of texts will suit every reader. And I think when some people find their niche, and it might be graphic novels, or it might be historical fiction, or it might be non-fiction, it could be verse novels or poetry. I think sometimes, but I think they have to be exposed to that range of resources that are out there, that range of books, so that they can actually see and find what they like. Or you're saying, I'm reading this great book.
But that's why it's important, though, the role models in books and the conversations around books. Because obviously, who's the actor who's in Superman, who played Superman? Was it Henry Cavill? Now, because he's come out and he's a massive Warhammer nerd, isn't he?
Is he?
Yeah, and he's made that now acceptable for people of a certain age to enjoy, like the lore of Warhammer. So I listen to a lot of the books of Warhammer, and I've read some of the authors, but it's because it's again having that sort of someone out there talking about books and being a role model for books. Yeah, it's important.
It is about sharing books and, the enjoyment of reading together and talking together about books.
Yeah, I mean, what we found is I was the same. We didn't realise the strength that, the sort of, as models, as the reading models, that the sort of an adult recommending a book to a child is such an easy win, it's such a powerful thing. And we didn't realise till we talked to staff. And now as a school, it's taken some time, but we are much better as staff talking about books and reading books and recommending books. And that's in 3 years.
One of the things that I learned through participating in the TRG was the idea of the 24 hours of reading and what they actually read over that time period. And I think that's really important because they can see what's informative or what's for when they're reading for entertainment, or what they choose to read when they're tired. And I think to give them that kind of licence as well in terms of their reading it would encourage them to maybe opt to pick up a book or a text that's going to suit their type of reading at that point in time. Because it is a changeable thing, it's a fluid thing. And in the classroom, children are quite vocal in their opinions, and they'll say things like, why would I want to read when I've got a phone? And then they're totally honest in that outlook and just presenting their case. I think maybe if you could show them that it's okay to use your phone as a reading tool as well, and maybe there are some reading apps that are available, there's audio books that are available. I'm a secondary school teacher, so the battle between, they might forget to bring a book with them to school that day, but there's no chance that they'll forget to bring their phone with them and have it in their bag.
I mean, I've spent quite a lot of detailed reading time on TikTok, actually.
It's also a place where a lot of teenagers get reading recommendations. I think as part of it is called Book Talk, just like there's maybe Book Twitter or Book X.
Yeah.
I think these things are, if it's ways for them to give recommendations on what they could be reading or what's like socially acceptable or trending at that point in time. I think that makes a big difference, especially where teenagers are concerned.
We know that gaming's huge and that, you know, children are doing that, are spending a lot of time playing these games. And if they can see that in a book and be immersed in a world that is like being immersed in a world in gaming, then they're more likely to, you know, if they can get into a world in a book like that. But it's all about giving them the choice and how that book looks, you know, on the front, isn't it?
But I think what you're saying about the idea of a world is really powerful, because I think a sort of series of books can do that, where they've met the characters a couple of times in the previous books. So when they come to the third book in the series, say, they don't feel in any way intimidated because they know what they're getting into. It's not a sort of scary, you know, alien territory.
So in our classes, we've got to make sure the children have lots of choice. We've got swap shelves where the children just bring books in and out. We made sure that even just having, you know, like you see in the library, books facing forward to that appeal of books. And so I've got Mr. Gale's brilliant books to borrow, about 25 books that I've read, graphic novels, non-fiction books, and the children. So it's about choice, isn't it? It's about the idea that it doesn't matter where they are in their reading journey. When they come into a classroom, when they have a conversation with an adult, they've got a variety of different ways to go.
And that they're not seeing that, you know, certain books are of less value, because, you know, I have had a child in the classroom that came up into the class, and they had the book that they thought they wanted me to see they were reading, and underneath they had a book that they, you know, and often you do have children that instead of having their one bucket book, they've got another two in their drawer, and that might be something, but they're hiding them away. And actually it's really important to, you know, that they can see that that is a valuable book, and it's that it might be that book like you were talking about that would give you that comfort, that the thing they go to, their easy read, the characters that they can relate to because they're in a series, or, you know, they've already read 5 books and they want to get back into that. And so, you know, it's important as practitioners in the classroom that we can recommend books and we can say what we like, but not voicing our opinion on whether, you know, that isn't a book that you should be reading because that's too low, you know, it's not hard enough, it's not difficult enough, or the plot's not
Complex.
Complex.
Yeah, you're not getting enough, there's not enough, you know, not enough adjectives, you're not going to improve your vocabulary.
No,
all of
and
those.
it's like the diary books, you know, all the sort of where they're very easy to read, so they're not in long chapters.
One of the ways that I kind of try to overcome that barrier is have a secondary classroom, and some days it's picture books that I've brought in for them to look at, because they'll tap straight back into the enthusiasm of the book they read or was read to them when they were a kid. Julia Donaldson, some of these kinds of writers as well, but also mixing them with more up-to-date picture books and having a range of those in the class that they can look through, look at the lovely artwork, look at the stories that are in there, and sometimes that gives them the idea that, well, if picture books can be looked at in different ways, or we're getting time here to look through these books and reminisce, then you're creating that social reading environment that engenders that love of reading.
Yeah. Often it's the kids who think of themselves as naughty or bad kind of need something to read that reflects that. So a book about someone who's bad, but also trying to be good, you know, and also books that don't necessarily fit the standard model of what's expected of a book. But also, I think a lot of kids have just started self-identifying as non-readers, and it actually just takes 1 or 2 books that they'll be reading without realising it, and suddenly they're reading lots, and they don't really think of it even as reading because it's no effort.
I think the point that you made as well, how readers see themselves reflected in books and reflected back to them, I think is important, because that can be a barrier. And I think now in libraries there's this diverse range of books with diverse range of protagonists and lead characters, and sometimes that can be really useful in terms of if as a child who themselves, I don't want to read because none of these books actually tell me a story about myself, and then bingo, they find the book that has the main character who has the same characteristics or qualities as they do.
You know, giving a child a book to read you know, as teachers, we're saying, well, this book's for you, then they're not ever going to really unlock that, are they? Because they're not going to pick up that book where they can, you know, read the blurbs. And if people aren't recommending books to them that they might like and they haven't tapped into their sort of interests, then they're not going to find that book. So I think it's really important that, you know, as teachers, we are making sure that we're giving them the choice to choose the book that they want to read. And
a lot of the children will say, "Oh, I'm not a very good reader," and a lot of them, surprised, it was quite a percent of children say, "I'm okay," or, you know, "I'm good." But a lot of children who we would think, you know, you're a good reader, you're a competent reader, you read really well. We've not seen that, but themselves, their own perception as readers as well was something that was really interesting.
When I was leading the TRG initially, it was hard for me to make the mindset shift in myself from a teacher of reading, like academically, or to make progress or to improve comprehension rather than reading for enjoyment. So that was a huge leap for me. And I think as a literate person, it's sometimes hard to step into the shoes of a struggling reader, and I think there's a huge difference in expecting kids to read silently, independently, and then the amount of kids that I see that ask to be read to, and I think if you can get over that barrier by reading to them, absolutely read to them, read aloud, read everything. I think there's lots of different ways that you can engage learners.
I've definitely seen kids where I've been like, "Oh, do you want to read this book about football or something?" And I'm allowed to read that, you know, and they get surprised that that's on the menu.
And that's why, I mean, we have class readers.
We have the class readers.
So across the year, you know, they vote and they choose a book that they're going to read as a class. You know, and they read that every day, and it's just nice because it exposes children that wouldn't access that book of their, you know, individually, but as a collective and together, they still can talk about it with their peers. So they've still read that book, they've still finished that book.
And then in the afternoon, we might do 5-10 minutes of the audiobook as well.
And that means you can expose them to different genres as well.
You
know, we don't steer them, but they choose ultimately. But you get some cohorts that are really interested in one genre, and you know, you think, oh, that's a really good book, and then the next class won't like that at all.
Do you not think that collective environment, though, it's great that they're allowed to have the confidence to say, I didn't like that book, I didn't enjoy that book, and then like have the choice to choose something.
It is
And
important.
maybe not read a book themselves and say, or something that you've recommended to them and say, I didn't like that, because they might feel frightened or a bit ashamed to do that. But having that kind of collective voice.
The honesty about the idea that you can pick up a book and read it and not like it.
And not finish it and actually say, that's not for me. You know, and to have this, you know, that's all about the teacher and the environment that you're in that classroom, isn't it? Because, you know, and that's a change in thinking for teachers to be really open and say, because I remember being at school and it was, you've chosen that book, you've got to finish it. You know, you couldn't I'd never dare go up to my teacher and say, I don't like it.
Because we do every day, the children, they take it in turns, they write up and they share a book that they're reading. But what we could probably do is say to the children, because we're always looking at the positives and positive. I mean, what would be different to say to the child, well, what did you not like about that book? Because we never really say that. I never really say, I would say, out of 10, you know, where'd you get it from? Who do you recommend? Who would like to read that book? But I never say to them, but what didn't you like about the book? What was it? Because there is, you know, it's just another conversation.
And we've got the cards in the front of the book. So on our class bookshelf, we've only got a few in each class, you know, that the class teachers read, so sort of 20 books. And in there's a card and you write your name if you've read it, and then you put your number of stars. Well, most of the books you pick up and they're 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. And it's just, actually, it would be great, wouldn't it, if someone put 1 star, 1 star, and I tell you what, I don't, and I'm going to disagree with so and so, so and so, so and so, so and so for these reasons.
It was great, but the ending was too predictable or something, you know. And because some books will really work for a particular child because it relates to their experience, or it's because it's something that feels familiar to them, or even just something that feels unfamiliar in an exciting way.
So what we've done, we've tried to do a balance. So we've got to make sure that obviously children have choice and they see themselves as readers and they're positive about their reading experiences, but we've got to make sure at the same time that we have a reading curriculum that through our school, so by the end of it, our children have had these wonderful book choices, but they've also been exposed to a range of quality literature as well.